In contemporary America, greater pop culture trends spread widely through music. Thanks to the rise of sound-based social platforms such as TikTok and Instagram Reels, wherein users design their content around a certain song or sound effect called sounds, we are seeing trends revolve around music now more than ever. Most recently, as of 2024, the summer was declared Brat Summer due to the widespread popularity of Charli XCX's new record, the titular Brat. The record inherently marked a wider cultural shift within the youth of America, fully embracing the return to normalcy and venture into adulthood following the coronavirus. This trend, movement, or the proper term, micro-trend rather, was co-opted by the Democratic National Party and Kamala Harris, representing a new, younger-minded optimism. Of course, this will be examined more thoroughly shortly. The important thing to note now is that following the election of 2024 and the rapidly setting in winter, there is a grim reality to be analyzed in its wake, and room for a new, more depressing Brat Summer. Charli Emma Atchison was born in Cambridge, 1992, got into music at a young age and started posting songs on MySpace as early as 2008. Later in 2012, she made larger headlines in the EU due to a feature with Swedish pop duo Icona Pop. It wouldn't be until 2014, however, that she made names overseas, partnering with Australian star Iggy Azalea for a few tracks that caused her to gain wider attention. From there, the rest is largely unimportant for the purposes of this essay. That is, until 2023, in which she would repurpose her single Speed Drive for the Barbie movie. In smaller part, the Barbie movie of 2023 and the resulting summer was a similar, albeit less relevant, micro-trend to the Brat Summer that followed, but I digress. From there, Charli XCX remained largely popular in the US, but the true beginning of the movement was, of course, the release of her record Brat. This album was similar in genre to her previous outings, however the production and writing were much higher in quality and most critics agree it is her best album. Due to this critical double whammy, both Brat's commercial success and her previous stardom in the US, we see the Brat Summer trend fully emulsify into the widespread Generation Z. Many are asking the same question. Why was Brat Summer such a national phenomenon? Wrong pop star. Why was Brat Summer so big though? It's important first to look at who is consuming this music so we can understand the demographics that are being hit. Generation Z, like the millennials before them whose youth was defined by 9/11, and Generation X with the Challenger explosion, Generation Z had COVID to deal with during their childhood. Most of us will be asking each other if we remember where we were on March 13th, 2020. Hell, I know I do. Despite this, as of 2023, schools were beginning to lift mask mandates, and by early 2024 it had been 4 years since the initial outbreak, and between the vaccinations and excessive restrictions showing their effectiveness, COVID was all but entirely eradicated from the public eye. At the same time, the majority of Generation Z, those who were born between 05 and 09, were maturing, entering upperclassmen levels of high school and early levels of university and college. This newfound sense of freedom amongst youth correlates directly with the themes of the album. That isn't to say that rebellious behavior and coming-of-age movements are exclusive to Generation Z, quite the opposite. Using the two examples we just spoke of, we see movements and cultures like emo and scene developing post-9/11, and pop-punk and anti-establishment ideas, with the very first episode of The Simpsons airing just a month after the Berlin Wall fell.
We are going to keep on trying to strengthen the American family to make American families a lot more like the Waltons and a lot less like the Simpsons.
Huh? Hey, we're just like the Waltons. We're praying for an end to the Depression, too.
Brat, as a whole, is about exactly that, the act of being a brat or bratty. A title which inherently is seen in a negative or degrading context to younger, self-empowered women, though Charli XCX is spinning the word in a positive light, effectively saying, yes, I am a brat, what about it? And creating a new meaning for the word altogether in doing so. That iconic color, dubbed brat green, in any other situation might be associated with something like a sour apple, vomit, or generally something distasteful. But now Charli is changing that sourness from a negative connotation into a positive one. Well, yes, the music being electronic dance pop is oriented towards a party-going crowd, the lyrics of the songs are also pointing in that direction. Take a listen.
When I get to the club, I wanna hear this club classics. Club classics, club classics.
Of course, this is just the flashy exterior of Brat. Reading deeper into Charli's writing, we can see the true meaning of being a brat is living your own life the way you want to. In fact, the album even opens up with Charlie saying, but it also speaks on independence and security in your own self, what it means to be confident, or in Charlie's words, a brat. Take a listen. And here again, she furthers the idea of the sourness in an apple being a fine thing to have.
I guess the apple could turn yellow or green. There's lots of different nuances to you and to me. I wanna grow the apple, keep all the seeds, but I can't help it, it's so angry you don't listen or leave.
In that last quote there from Apple, we're seeing Charlie reflect on not just friendships, but relationships with her family. The titular apple being the one that may or may not fall far from the tree. This, in reality, is what it truly means to be a brat. Looking at these examples, it's not difficult to pinpoint specifically why this record identifies with so many young people. These recent adults are able to make decisions for themselves for the first time. They are able to truly be a brat. July 21st, 2024, Joe Biden, then President of the United States, announced his withdrawal from the upcoming election against Donald Trump after a less than convincing debate performance. Of course, though Kamala Harris wasn't automatically ensured as the spot for the DNC's nominee, she was who most people generally assumed would become next in line to run, and they were eventually right. But the point is, the same day Biden stepped down, Charlie XCX would tweet, "Kamala is brat." Harris was 60 at the time of the election, and though she's not the youngest presidential candidate we've had by far, Obama was 47 during the start of his run in just 2008, compared to both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, she's significantly younger, and significantly less inflicted with dementia. Her slogan was the excellent, "We're not going back," signifying not just a halt of what would be Trump's policies, but also a push forward. If you're listening well, you may see how this echoes the message of Brat so perfectly. Generation Z definitely does not want to go back to COVID and their childhood, just like how the DNC does not want to go back to Donald Trump's presidency in 2016. Harris is taking advantage of this newfound self-empowering spin on the term brat to come off as someone who goes her own way. Specifically, this kind of misogyny-rooted term is something you might see used by contemporary conservatives to demean independent women, but Harris uses that instead to her advantage. September 22nd, 2024, Charlie would tweet, "Goodbye forever, Brat Summer." And though the movement was over in name, this energy carried through the rest of her campaign, and youthful optimism continued to light up the rest of fall. That is, in simple terms, what Brat Summer is. End of story, right? Well, not quite. The election did happen. Kamala Harris lost, by a significant margin, worse than Hillary Clinton did in 2016, and her campaign was an objective disaster. My point here is that Trump has already won, and almost certainly things are going to get worse. I don't think that's up for contesting. Not that personally I have a problem with the winter, but many people do not enjoy it. Many people despise the biting cold, lifeless trees, and gray skies. Whether you're greatly affected by seasonal depression or too busy with your normal depression, it's a fact that the disruption of our circadian cycles due to lack of sunlight affects us all, even a little bit. Now more than ever, we as a generation are weary. We are mourning the loss of our newfound summer fun. Interestingly, this pattern follows an extremely similar pattern to World War I and the Roaring Twenties. Following World War I, there was a Western sense of rejoicing peace. Soldiers were returning home and the economy was up, so it could never fail, right? This is what the Roaring Twenties were known for, these hedonistic parties and self-indulgent lifestyles that weren't really known to that generation before. To label Brat as nothing but hedonistic would do a disservice to the record and go against everything I just talked about, but to label it as self-servient is a different story entirely, and looking at the micro-trend of Brat Summer itself, apart from the album and how the general public celebrate it, it's not difficult to make that comparison. The Roaring Twenties were of course precluded by World War I, in our case that would be COVID-19, and obviously the Great Depression is likely to result from policies implemented by Donald Trump's presidency. Though it's not terribly important for the general point, it is an interesting comparison. In the modern era, a lot of sad music and depression itself has been romanticized to a dangerous extent. This can be tracked all the way back to Netflix's 2017 show 13 Reasons Why, but that's a different topic entirely. Instead, let's look at Taylor Swift for a moment. The remake of her breakout album Red in 2021, Red, Taylor's version, began what many call Sad Girl Autumn. Of course, there is nothing wrong with being melancholic and self-reflective, especially during turbulent times such as 2021, but there is a certain sting that the common man may feel looking at the wildly rich and successful Taylor Swift making music about being depressed and aimless. This artificial rich person's view of depression shows in her songs, and to many of us, it doesn't feel real. Where to look then if we want to find depressing music by someone who is truly miserable and truly a no-good soul? Steve Morrissey, commonly called just Morrissey, was born on May 22, 1959, to an Irish immigrant family in the Greater Manchester area of England. He first formed the Smiths after being approached by who would be his guitarist, Johnny Marr, in 1978. The Smiths' music and Morrissey's own solo career is defined by this teenage angst, this sexual frustration, and these anti-establishment ideas, and this is exactly what the youth of America needs to recapture. This is almost the exact opposite of what is presented to us by Charlie XCX's Brat. Brat takes stride in your own independence and being at peace with yourself, whereas most of the Smiths' best work is about being angry at the world for rejecting you. This segues perfectly into what I believe will be the start of the Smiths' Winters. Let's analyze a few of the Smiths' most popular songs and really investigate deeply why they're the perfect band to listen to this winter. Starting with what you've been listening to, There Is a Light That Never Goes Out.
And if a double-decker bus crashes into us.
This song is often considered their best song and also inarguably their most popular song. Firstly, the music itself. This song is defined as jangle pop. Actually, most of their music is. A genre that's emphasized by, well, jangly guitars and pop-like melodies, reminiscent of bands from the 1960s. Think Beach Boys. This energetic music with sorrowful lyrics means that it's easy to listen to without automatically putting you in a bad mood, but is relatable and enjoyable to listen to when you are in a bad mood. Before looking at the lyrics, let's look at the structure of the song. This song goes by the very simple order of verse, chorus, outro, making it super easy to understand. The rhyme structure is also bizarre and unique. Almost none of the song rhymes, and the examples are limited to unsatisfying same-line rhymes, such as
And if a double-decker bus crashes into us.
or half rhymes like
To die by your side, well, the pleasure, the privilege is mine.
But other than those few exceptions, this song almost never rhymes, despite feeling musically competent. Finally, let's take a look at those lyrics. Generally, the song is a love song, most of their work is, but this one specifically isn't just about a love interest. It's about a force pushing him to be with his loved one.
Driving in your car, I never want to go home, because I haven't got one all alone. Oh, I haven't got one.
Morrissey isn't saying he doesn't want to leave his love because he loves them so much. He doesn't want to leave because he's been displaced. Something has happened in his home life that made it a non-desirable place to live in. This sentiment is repeated later on with more explicit descriptions, such as
Driving in your car, oh please don't drop me home, because it's not my home, it's their home and I'm welcome no more.
Who they are doesn't really matter for the purposes of this essay. What does matter is that Morrissey, or the character he's singing from the perspective of, is afraid of what happened at home. Finally, we see Morrissey singing about wanting to do something but losing the confidence at the last minute.
And in the darkened underpass, I thought, oh God, my chance has come at last. But then a strange fear gripped me and I just couldn't ask.
Well, there is still a debate as to whether he means to ask the love he is with to further their relationship, or perhaps a darker, more suicidal act he wants to do. The point that matters is the song is remarking on his desire to change and escape from his home, but an inability to do so permanently. More than anything, he's okay with dying, as long as it means he can be away from home. We see this fear of your home past and desire to run away, but last-minute hesitation echoed in another one of their biggest hits, Back to the Old House. This song is musically and lyrically far more simple than the prior, but still invokes similar themes. It's much slower paced, so it's not always a great song to listen to, but it certainly hits hard when especially upset. This desire, this want, is a very common theme amongst the Smiths' music. There's almost always a hint of a more vibrant life, either in the past or an unattainable future throughout their lyrics, and this song emphasizes that more than most. Take a listen.
I would rather not go back to the old house. There's too many bad memories.
Can you see where I'm going? This longing for a no longer existent happiness and regret for poor decision making is exactly what a lot of Americans will think under Donald Trump's presidency. A lot of Americans may find themselves regretting their decision to go back to the old house. Harris herself said,
We are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back.
You can see Morrissey's desire to live in a better world, but an inability to make that decision. And now both he and the United States will reap the consequences of their so.
And you never knew how much I really liked you, because I never even told you all I meant to.
It is this constant theme of longing and angst that is the reason why the Smiths are the perfect band to listen to in the wake of the 2024 election. With winter setting in, our circadian cycles are disrupted and our seasonal depression is setting in. We are missing summer, we are missing being brats. As we established, to be a brat is to be secure and happy in your own decisions, those decisions being to party all the time. Nobody's in the mood, we're all too miserable now. There is one song, however, that I've deliberately saved, as it's without a doubt the best example as to why the Smiths emphasize this post-summer depression. As many of the Smiths fans might have guessed, this is the best song to relate to our current emotions. It's a perfect example of longing for better times.
I was happy in the haze of a drunken hour, but heaven knows I'm miserable now.
That drunken hour that Morrissey speaks of is absolutely relatable to the happy-go-lucky ideology that drove Brat Summer. Many of the youth, whose yearly schedules revolve around school, didn't have many responsibility for the summer months and could fully enjoy themselves. Now, many of us are dreading seeing our families for the holidays and moreover, dreading the emptiness that follows from after Christmas up through mid-February.
Two lovers entwined, pass me by, and heaven knows I'm miserable now.
This isn't a perfect metaphor, but for many of us in the US, we could liken this line to another country with a much higher standard of living for the middle class and a much more supportive government. Take any country in northwestern Europe, Iceland, Denmark, Finland, all incredibly high on the happiness ratings. These lovers entwined that may pass us by could very well be interpreted as a citizen of another country who is happy with their government, or even a citizen of the US whose standard of living won't depreciate, someone in the upper class with high degrees of privilege. The ever-iconic chorus also can associate well with politics.
In my life, oh why do I give valuable time to people who don't care if I live or die?
To interpret this line in a context relating to the election is simple. They are people who do not see the struggling. They are the privileged who would not be affected by oppressive laws enacted. These people often do not care if oppressed groups live or die, but oftentimes they are still presented with positions of power in society, and therefore the lower social classes are more often than not forced to give them their valuable time when they'd much rather kick them in the eye. Of course, this doesn't just have to be viewed in a socio-political context, it can be taken literally. When you're exhausted, a lot of us give a lot more than we really have of ourselves, and it can be draining. And the point here is that it's okay not to give 100% all the time, hence why the Smiths' winter should exist to begin with. Have you ever lost a loved one? More often than not, taking that time to yourself to mourn and grieve is a far more effective way of dealing with grief than simply powering through it. Studies show that giving yourself space to be sad, to grieve, is an important step in becoming a healthier person. To many of those who are experiencing seasonal depression, there's effectively no reason as to why you should try and power through everything to give 100% all the time. The Smiths recognize that you need to be miserable sometimes. That yearning that you sometimes just can't get over is okay. In her February 2022 book, The Grieving Brain, The Surprising Science of How We Learn for Love and Loss, Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, Associate Professor at the University of Arizona, speaks about grief, saying,
"The heart of grieving really is around yearning for that person to be back or for things to be back the way they were before."
She speaks on the process of grieving as more of a process of learning, explicitly describing grief as a process of learning, a process that is healthy and important for us to go through.
And it really has struck me that grieving can be thought of as a form of learning. This is, in a few different ways we can think of it. One is that after we experience something as difficult as, our one and only passing away, we really have to figure out, how do I live in the world now? What does it mean to retire when, this person that I've been going to do this with for decades is no longer going to do that with me? So part of it is learning to be in the world as a person who carries this absence with them. But even at a smaller level, you can think about all the tiny little habits that we have to change. This is that feeling of, the experience of picking up the phone to call them because something has happened. And then, of course, realizing that we can't call them.
In an interview done by the American Psychological Association in March of 2022, Dr. O'Connor elaborates on the points she made in her book.
So she described grief in a very accurate way. Anger is a part of grief, isn't it? And depression is often a part of the feelings of grief. What makes it difficult, and we know now from some of the more recent work by Jason Holland and Bob Niemeyer, who looked at the trajectory of grieving over time. So the difference between just what the moment felt like, the anger, say, for example, someone is expressing, compared to how that anger might change if you interviewed the same person multiple times across a year or a couple of years of their life. And so what we know now is that there isn't a linear process. We don't do all of depression and then we get to all of acceptance, but rather over time, research suggests that yearning declines and that acceptance increases, but that this doesn't happen in a stair-step kind of way. Rather, we know, for example, that at anniversaries or at the holidays, people tend to have a resurgence of grief. And that doesn't mean that their grieving trajectory isn't still going in the right direction. It just means that these are moments where people are aware of their grief. So
I would love to go back to the old house, but I never will. I never will. I never will.
When you're angry at life in the world, there's powerful anthems with distorted electric guitars, like Sweet and Tender Hooligan. Bargaining is where some of their best cuts lie, but the most representative has to be Please, Please, Please Let Me Get What I Want.
Please, 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 let me get what I want this time.
Plenty of the Smiths' songs emphasize feelings of depression, as we've studied, but Asleep is a classic, haunting melody with a beautiful piano that really accentuates that hopelessness.
Sing me to sleep, sing me to sleep. I'm tired and I want to go to bed.
There's no doubt that there is some peace in acceptance, but as Dr. O'Connor puts it, acceptance doesn't always mean total freedom from grief. It just means accepting that the loss has happened. And maybe that means you're miserable, but you take solace in that. This brings us back to their perfect song, Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now. With all this in mind, it's no surprise as to why the Smiths resonated with Generation X during their youth. While lyrically and sonically, you can hear the music and understand, yes, this is sad, analyzing things a little deeper shows the mental health benefits to listening to them during such a depressing time. Eras of grief, eras of yearning. Perhaps eras of yearning for something like Brat Summer. Thanks for listening.